You ever notice how people only become Bible scholars when they're mad at Christians? They will say something like, bro, that book has been rewritten 100 times. It's a translation of a translation of a translation. Didn't the church remove books? Didn't Rome edit it? Didn't Constantine decide what went in? And what's wild is that whole list gets repeated with full confidence, usually with zero receipts. So here's what we're doing today. No preaching at you, no assuming faith. We're treating the Bible like a document first. Because if the Bible is not trustworthy as a text, then arguing about what it means is pointless. You cannot build meaning on a foundation you think is paper mache. By the end of this video, you will have a simple framework to test the Bible without needing to already believe it. 3 questions, that's it. What is the Bible really? How did it survive with an identity intact? Why do so many people distrust it in the first place? People treat the Bible like a rumor. Rumors do not have paper trails. Texts do. Episode 2 is where we open that trail and see if it holds up. Today is the foundation. Let's be honest about the real reason people hesitate with the Bible. Sometimes it's intellectual. I do not trust ancient texts. I do not trust religious institutions. I have heard it was corrupted. Sometimes it's emotional. I read something that bothered me. I saw Christians use verses like weapons. I grew up with it forced on me. Sometimes it's social. My friends will clown me if I took it seriously. I do not want to be associated with the loud people online. So when someone says, I do not trust the Bible, you have to ask, do they mean the message? Do they mean the morality? Or do they mean the text itself, like the words on the page? This series is about the text. We can talk worldview later. We can talk morality later. If the text is unreliable, everything else is noise. Most people imagine the Bible like a single book that dropped out of the sky, already leather-bound, already in English, already with chapter numbers. That's not what it is. The Bible is a library, a collection of writings written across centuries, different genres, different settings, different authors. History, poetry, letters, wisdom, prophecy. If you're a skeptic, that should actually matter to you, because libraries leave paper trails. Libraries have categories. Libraries have internal consistency tests. And this is where a lot of people get tripped up. They judge the Bible like it's one thing. They read one passage, get annoyed, and assume the whole thing is that. That is like watching one scene from a movie and declaring you understand the plot. The better question is, does this library have a coherent storyline? Or is it random spiritual journaling that got stapled together? Because if it is random, it should read random. It should feel like a pile. Themes should drift. The God in one part should feel unrelated to the God in another. But when you zoom out, the Bible reads like a story with a spine. Creation, fall, covenant, conflict, redemption, restoration. That does not automatically make it true. It does tell you the Bible is not chaotic in the way people casually assume. Here's where people get it wrong. Survival. People speak like the Bible survived because it was protected by power, like it had a marketing budget, like it had a social advantage. That is not how it started. Early Christianity did not begin as a comfortable mainstream movement. For long stretches, it spread through pressure. Most things people believe in evaporates the second it gets inconvenient. You have watched it happen in real time. Friend groups, movements, trends, even family convictions. Pressure shows you what is real, because fake stuff does not survive contact with cost. So here's the question that matters. What kind of message survives when it becomes expensive? And practically, this is how texts survive under pressure. People copy them, people hide them, people memorize them, people translate them, people read them quietly in private, to keep the message alive. That is not romantic. That is logistics. That is how you preserve anything in a world without printing presses, without cloud storage, without a download PDF button. So when someone says the Bible is just a fragile tradition, ask him to explain the survival pattern. Fragile traditions do not keep crossing borders and languages like that. Fragile traditions do not keep reproducing under opposition. Again, survival does not equal truth. Survival does tell you this text is not a weak rumor that barely made it. Many authors is the part skeptics side-eye immediately. Fair assumptions. Humans cannot keep a group chat consistent for 2 days. So you do not look for identical writing styles, you look for consistency in worldview and narrative direction. Here is a normal example. If 10 people tell you what happened at a car accident, they will describe it differently. Different words, different angles. That is not automatically a contradiction. It becomes a contradiction when the core story cannot exist together. So the question is, does the Bible keep circling the same core realities? God as a creator, humans as moral agents, not cosmic accidents, evil as real, not imaginary, the need for rescue, not just self-improvement, a consistent direction of history, not endless cycles. You can reject the claims, you cannot pretend the text is a random pile and still be intellectually honest. This is where some people have their first shift. They realize the Bible is bigger than the verses they saw on a meme. Here's the uncomfortable part. A lot of people do not reject the Bible because they studied it. They reject it because they heard a story about it. And the story sounded smarter than actually checking. Here are 3 lines you hear everywhere. Even if you never said them, you have heard them. Objection 1. It has been rewritten so many times. People mean changed. They assume copying equals editing. Episode 2 will deal with this directly. Objection 2. It is a translation on translation. People imagine a sloppy chain like English, from Spanish, from French, from Greek, and by the time it hits you, it's a mess. This is also episode 2 and 3. Translations usually go back to Hebrew and Greek sources, not a random language ladder. Objection 3. The church removed books to control people. This one is emotional because it implies manipulation. It needs careful tone. You're not here to mock people for being suspicious. You're here to clarify categories. We will address this later in the series when we talk about canon and why different traditions have different collections. For now, keep the point simple. These objections exist because people assume the Bible is like a rumor. Whispered, mutated, politicized, untraceable. The point of this trilogy is to slow down the claims and test them like adults. Skeptic or not, you should at least know what the text claims. Christians are not saying this is inspiring. They're saying this is revelation. That is the internal claim. And if you want a single line that captures that posture, here is one that is short and clear. The grass withers, the flower fades, but the word of our God stands forever. That verse is not a manuscript lecture. It is the claim. A claim that the message does not expire with time. And that sets up the next question, the one everybody really cares about. Because even if the Bible claims permanence, people still ask, okay, but did we lose the original? Did copying change it? Can we know what the authors actually wrote? That is episode 2, and I'm going to keep it plain. No nerd flexing, no technical fog, just this, how the manuscripts work, why variants exist, why the telephone game comparison fails, what scholars can actually say with confidence. So, can you trust the Bible? Today was the foundation, not a sermon, not a debate, just a baseline reality that the Bible is a library with identity, continuity, and a survival story that does not fit the lazy internet script. In episode 2, we go straight at the big fear. Did we lose the original text? That's where we test the corruption claim head on. No fog, no flexing. If you have ever wondered whether this book is trustworthy, stay with the series. If you want evidence without the attitude, subscribe. This is Unfiltered Faith, where we stop pretending and start pursuing the truth.